Datagrid is a powerful component that displays a list of records in a table format. This list of products, for instance, uses a data grid. Out of the box, it supports pagination, it supports reordering by clicking on a column header, row selection, etc. Data grids are very common in list pages, but they can also be used in detailed pages. For instance, if I go to the product detail, I have a review tab, and the list of reviews associated to this product also uses a data grid. In fact, you can use a data grid everywhere there is a list context. And now let's look at the code. Datagrid doesn't need any props. In fact, it reads the data from the list context created by its parent, the list component. To define the datagrid columns, I use a series of field components as child, and datagrid guesses the column labels based on the field sources. So reference image description, reference image description here are the sources, except for this image field where I customized the label using the label prop. I can also reorder the columns by reordering the children, so I can put the description second here, and now the description is the second column. And as you saw, when I click on a row, I go to the edition view. I can change this by updating the default row click handler to, for instance, show. And in this case, whenever a user clicks on a datagrid row, they will go to a read-only show view. Let's get back to the edit element. And notice that when a user comes back to the list from, for instance, an edition view, they keep the same sort, and if they have filters, they keep the same active filters. For instance, if I change to sorted by description, I go to the first one, I come back, it's still ordered by description. So users find the list in the way, in the state they left it in, and they don't have to start over. One common task you want to do is to change the width of a given column. So for instance, I want to give a bit more space to this reference column here. And the way you can do that is by using the SX prop on the datagrid component. And to target a specific column, you'll use one of the generated classes by RectAdmin. And if you inspect the generated code, you will see that this table header has a colon-reference class name. The same goes, for instance, for this description column header. It has a colon-description. And Datagrid gives this class name not only to the table header, but also to the table cell. You can see here column-description. So if I want to target the reference column, I just need to pass to target the colon-reference class name, and I can now give a width of 150 pixel, a width. And now I have more space. Maybe it's not that obvious. Let it give it 200, and now it's even larger. So let's get back to 150. Another common task is to change the alignment of a given column. I just need to set the text align to right to change the alignment of a field. It's already done by default on number field, like for the price and the stock here. So that's why they're already right aligned. While we are at styling, I often need to apply a custom style to certain rows, and I can use the row SX prop for that. Row SX expects a function as a parameter that Datagrid will call for each row using the current record as a parameter. So it will receive the record, and it should return a style object, or rather an SX object. And you can do calculation based on record. So for instance, I can say that if record.stock is less than, I don't know, 35, for instance, then I'll return a background color of reddish. Otherwise, I won't change the style. And now I can see that these the elements with low stock come with a different background. Users can select one or more rows to reveal what we call a bulk action button or a series of bulk action buttons. By default, Datagrid comes with one bulk action button, which is the bulk delete button, which allows to delete several rows. You might not want to let users delete elements from a Datagrid. In that case, you can remove this functionality altogether by setting bulk action buttons to false, and now the checkboxes disappear and they can no longer reveal these bulk action toolbars. You can also pass your own components as bulk action buttons to add, for instance, a bulk export button or bulk update button. So it's totally customizable. And one neat trick that you may not be aware of is that users can select a range of rows by clicking on the first row and shift clicking on the last row, and now it directly selects a range of items. Some data grids contain data from other resources, and that's the case here. In my model, each product has a category ID field, but here I'm displaying the category name. And to do so, I'm using a reference field. And the way it works is ReactAdmin aggregates and deduplicates the category IDs for all rows. So instead of calling the data provider.getOne method 10 times to get the category for each row, the reference field will call data provider.getMany once. So for instance, if I look at the console, I refresh the data here, I can see that this list only requires 2 API calls, one to get the list of products and one to get the associated categories. One neat trick of Datagrid is that you can reveal a panel below each row to display additional information. This is called an expand panel. I can use the expand prop here to set the content of this expand panel. And for instance, I can put the description inside the expand panel instead of inside its own column. And now users see a special button that they can click to reveal the actual description. And this leaves more room to add more columns if you want. Let's get back to the original table layout. And yeah, if you have more room, you can add more columns, like for instance width and height columns for this list of posters. And Datagrid is the favorite component for many of my customers, and they love it because it reminds them of Excel. And they tend to cram a lot of information in it, just like this Datagrid becomes a bit crowded. But they end up with too many columns and a horizontal scroll bar, which is not common in web applications. A neat trick to prevent that is to hide some columns by default and let users reveal them using a special button. To do so, I have to turn the Datagrid into a Datagrid configurable. It doesn't change anything when I save it. Just doesn't support the raw SX prop. But now I can add a select columns button to the list action. So I have to set the list actions, the actions in the list component. I'm going to use a top toolbar for that, and I will add the 2 buttons that are here by default to create an export button. So I'll put the create button and the export button, and create buttons to be imported. So it shouldn't change anything, right? But now I can add the select columns button. Select columns button, and now I have this new button that appears, which lets user show, hide, and reorder columns at will. So this is a very good trick to let users reorganize the data grid as they want. So data grid is already a very powerful component, but customers often want more features in their lists. They want to resize columns, they want to group rows by a given field, they want to edit the data directly in the list, to pin columns, etc. And to do so, you'll have to replace Datagrid with Datagrid AG, which is an alternative Datagrid component. Let me show you how it works. So I have prepared an alternative product list here. So I'm going to change the product list to product list AG. And you can see that the look and feel has changed a bit. Datagrid AG is an alternative table component based on AG Grid, and it's a powerful and flexible open source table library. It's a bit more complex to use, but it offers a lot more features. So I can, for instance, here resize the columns. I can edit directly within each cell, and I can group the rows by category, for instance. So Datagrid AG is a great alternative to Datagrid when you want to go beyond what Datagrid is capable of. It's a pro feature, so you'll need to subscribe to the Enterprise Edition to use it. And that's a lot to digest. As usual, refer to the documentation for more details. And until next time, happy coding.